What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Pixelists Podcast, the podcast about all the nerdy things we love and enjoy. And today is a glorious day, as I'm sure all of you that are watching on YouTube can tell, because we got our boy Blake back.
We got rid of that schmuck, Jeremy.
Jeremy, we love you. Don't listen to him.
We don't. We don't, Jeremy. You know?
But we're glad to have the OG back, for sure.
That's right.
So welcome back, my friend.
Thank you, my friend. It's good. It's good to be back.
Yeah. I've missed you, as I'm sure everyone else that watches us has, because they're tired of seeing me rant to a stuffed dinosaur. But, you know, the highs and lows of the Pixelists Podcast, you know, we're here for it all.
You know, we are two men in our mid-30s. There comes a point where the stuffed dinosaur can only go so far.
True. But we're going to push that limit. Be sure of that.
So, yeah, right. How's your coffee today?
So, let's see. Today's Thursday. So on Monday, I ran out of coffee, and I have not gone to purchase more yet. But what I do have is, well, I do still technically have coffee, but I don't have normal coffee. So since then, I've been drinking some mushroom coffee. Have you ever had that?
Nah, man.
It's supposed to be like really good for you. I couldn't tell you much more about it than that, but
mushroom coffee.
Yeah, I just so happened to have like 5 packets of this mushroom coffee from like at some point in my life.
Is it like ground mushroom?
Yeah, it looks like coffee grounds, but it's like made from mushrooms.
Does it taste like funky at all, or?
So, you know, well, first of all, you know, I drink coffee black, so it's not like it tastes the best to begin with. So it definitely tastes different, but it's really not that like. There's a little mushroomy in there that you can tell, but other than that, it still tastes like coffee, really.
Yeah. Try not to judge, man, and I will be sure not to do that in your face.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
But check out the Discord, because I might have a thing to say about that to our...
You gonna air it all out there?
Spoiler tag.
Yeah.
Will do not read.
But that, hey, great segue though.
Where did you get that, by the way? Just like from the store, or?
Sorry, the mushroom coffee?
Yeah.
I don't remember. Like, so I think I might have gotten it as like 10 packets of it were included in some like bigger, like box of things I got somewhere. Like, I don't really remember. But you know, probably like, maybe it was even from like something from Ashley's work or something, like a gift that had like a bunch of random stuff in it, you know. There happened to be like samples of this mushroom coffee in there.
Mushroom coffee, iguana juice.
Yeah.
You know, I just feel like these things would get like bundled together or something.
Yeah. It's not bad though. I mean, it's gotten the job done since I've been too lazy to go purchase more coffee.
That's what the slogan says on it. It's not bad though. So
it'll get the job.
I shouldn't knock it. Because it could be 5 years from now. I'm like, dude, mushroom coffee.
Yeah. I mean, again, I'm not well versed on it, but I think the whole point is it's supposed to be like healthier.
Yeah. Well, mushrooms are like crazy good for you.
Yeah.
So that would make sense.
So I think that's the idea. But yeah, I need to. I actually literally after this, I have to go on some errands, and so I'll be going to get the normal coffee. So you can no longer judge me at that point.
Okay. You should splurge a little bit on. I feel like would even the budget is really tight for us. We always try to get good coffee.
Yeah. I do. So. We did recently. This is just the coffee hour, which we run into sometimes. But we did actually recently get a new coffee, like a whole pot brewer.
Ooh, that's a game changer.
From her sister, because they upgraded and got like a really fancy machine. Yeah. So yeah, I've been meaning to go pick up some like nice grounds to use that with.
Yeah. Okay.
So I need to do that. But I guess we'll stop talking about coffee. I mean, I know you guys love that, and that's what you're here for. But no, we're here to talk about a little bit of Critical Role. There may be, I'm trying to think before I jump into the normal spiel here, if there's anything outside the norm that we needed to mention, especially since it's been a while since we've both sat down. But like I felt like there was something. Oh, this isn't what I was just thinking of, but I did just remember something else. Apologies to all of our podcast listeners out there today. As I was prepping for this episode, I realized I didn't upload our last 2 episodes to the podcast platform. Now, again, those were just recaps because Blake wasn't here, so
Yeah.
you didn't miss out on much. But I still wanted to apologize for anybody that only listens to us via podcast and is like, "Where did they go?"
Yeah,
So
we get some good traction on that too. For you
yeah,
guys, maybe if you haven't checked out the podcast, I mean, we are called the Pixelist Podcast, but if you haven't checked it out, give us some love. We get some surprisingly good traction there.
yeah.
Um,
So yeah, again, shout out to all you guys, and again, my apologies for failing you these past couple of weeks. So today you'll see 3 uploads. It'll be episode 83, 84, and then this one, 85, obviously.
yeah.
But yeah, you mentioned the Discord a second ago. As always, that'll be linked in the description. Come join us there. It is Thursday if you're listening to this when we put it out, which means Critical Role tonight. We'll be having our weekly watch party there, and things are getting pretty juicy. So it looks like it might be a good one. So come hang out with us for that. But also, we talk about all sorts of stuff in there. And the Wizard, the Witch, and the Wild One. I maybe gave a little plug for this in my solo episodes recently, but now that Blake's back, especially, I know both of us just want to reiterate how good that show is. And if you guys aren't watching it yet, you need to be. Because our next podcast will be on that probably, in the next few days at some point. So be on the lookout for that. But it is fantastic. We are coming up on the end of the second arc of that show. We'll be talking more about that in our episode there. But always a good time to jump in at the what is coming, the start of a new arc. So be your chance now to catch up and be prepared for that. Anything else, my friend, that I'm failing to mention here?
I think that's it. We do have our Friday streams.
There we go.
Our Friday, it's at 1 o'clock Central Time, our weekly wrap up. So if you want to get together and just talk shop, talk D&D, talk Critical Role Worlds Beyond, you can come join us, about a half-hour format. Having said that, I don't know if I can do tomorrow's.
Okay.
Because I have a work event that goes all the way up to 12:30, and it's in Bentonville, so I
Yeah.
got like a 30-minute drive.
Well,
You might have
we
to hold down the
can.
fort for or we could push it half an hour or
Yeah, I
what
was
have
gonna
you.
say we don't like we can talk about this off air, as it were, if we want to. But I was just gonna say if we need to just push it and you could still do it, then I would prefer
Yeah, okay.
that than just
Okay.
riding
We'll
solo.
stay tuned to the Discord, and we'll
Yeah.
we'll put out a little announcement about that. But that'll be on every Friday at 1 o'clock.
Boom boom.
Except for maybe tomorrow. It might be later. So, okay. Is that everything you think?
I think so. Well, just again for the plug for the Discord, we've been mentioning it a lot recently and not following through. But our Sunday Fun Day watch parties are something that we want to get going again. So similar to the watch party for Critical Role tonight, we want to keep doing watch parties on Sunday nights. So again, if you're not in the Discord, it's another reason to join. And if you're already in there, you already know the drill. So yeah, but that's it. That's all I got.
Okay. Well, anytime you tune into one of our videos, you've probably noticed we do a little bit of a recap at the start of each one of our deep dive discussions. And what we like to do is take that recap and peel it out as its own YouTube video. So if you're watching just the recap, there is actually a link in the episode description that will take you to the full discussion on the episode. And you can definitely drop a comment on that video. Tell us what you thought about the episode. But this was episode. Now I'm panicking because it's been so long since I've done this. I think this was episode 85.
Yep.
Yes, episode 85, and this one was called
Intense
what?
interrogations.
Yes, and this was an extremely intense episode. We open up back in Barthy the Elder's abode. The party has essentially thrown the Willmaster into the portable hole, along with a couple of other Ruby Vanguard, and there is the nearby caravan essentially approaching to examine the kerfuffle as to what has happened. The explosion of Laudna's fireball. I think there was another really loud noise. And so the party's very quickly trying to figure out, what do we do? There is a cellar to this house. And so some of the party goes down to the cellar, the basement of this place. And then I think Orem, Imogen, and F.C.G have this idea specifically Imogen and FCG, to pretend like they're part of the Ruby Vanguard and that FCG has malfunctioned, and that those noises that they heard would have been the sounds of this automaton malfunctioning. Ladna puts like her ichor out onto FCG to make it look like oil. There's a knock at the door, and the party is extremely surprised to not just see a couple of Ray Lauren, but actually, no, one's a Ray Lauren, a Juggernaut, and then the elvish looking character with the pale white skin who seems to be the leader who's come over to investigate, and a third person who the party recognizes to be Ivan Hydroga, the owner of the museum
Yeah.
from the museum heist back like episode 20 something.
Yeah. Back in the Heartmore.
Yeah, talk about a throwback. But if you connect the dots, it actually makes sense since the party was sent there by what's her face and Dressar. She's the one who alerted them to this heist mission, and she had been working with the Paragon's Call and intentionally.
Right. Gianna Hexam, right?
Thank you, Gianna Hexam. But it turns out that Hydroga is part of the Ruby Vanguard, has joined their ranks, and has made his way up to Ruidus, and immediately recognizes the party. And to which the party's like, yeah, we joined too. And what happens over the next 20 to 30 minutes is what we can call a masterclass in amazing roles from Laura Bailey.
Yep.
Laura Bailey is actually going to have numerous deception, persuasion, and intimidation rolls, all of which that are going to hit above 20. So one of those first ones is convincing Hydroga that we've joined the Ruby Vanguard too, to which Hydroga is actually relieved to see a friendly face and confesses to Imogen that he despises being on Ruidus. That's sort of like what was promised, kind of the grandiose nature of like, we're freeing the world from the gods, that it's really not as nice as it was cracked up to be, and he really misses his life of comfort back on Exandria. They also, Imogen also convinces the elvish leader that F.C.G. was the noise that they had heard. And when the leader asks about, well, have you seen the Willmaster? Imogen explains that the Willmaster had come by previously before and had moved on as the Wukar stampede occurred in the previous episode. They haven't seen them since. And again, there's a successful deception check that happens with this. They then offer to join the caravan, to which Hydroga is especially excited about. And they decide to call it for the night and to meet back up first thing in the morning to continue on to Kaviris. Is that right? The city that they're heading to? Capital city?
I believe so.
Kaviris. So they leave, and then the party, they can't go to bed. They have some unfinished business. They decide to open up the hole and interrogate the Willmaster. The problem here is that as soon as Ashton opens up the portable hole, he is affected by Dominate Person, casted by the Willmaster down in the hole. Ashton immediately attacks and hits Imogen. The party scurries to close the hole back up. The spell essentially ends after Ashton takes some damage. And they decide to reopen the hole with everyone basically jumping in at once and beating up the Willmaster so that she can't get a spell off. They do that. They knock the Willmaster out. And then they decide, we got this awesome harness. Let's use the harness on the Willmaster. So they use the harness. Orem dons the harness and gains the ability to cast Dominate Person himself for 24 hours, basically, till his next long rest. There's also a lot of dialogue around, like, what do we do? Like, maybe we should just use the harness completely and do the hour ritual to consume this person. Chetney actually does grim psychometry on the harness and has a vision of Ludinus using the harness on this butterfly nymph fae creature. And Laudna especially is very much on team, she keeps saying, let's suck out their juices. And F.C.G. is really like, hey, like we can't kill people. We're the good guys, right? Sure, F.C.G., sure. Anywho,
you're eating that up.
Oh, dude, I was feasting. Anywho, there's still the issue of the two other people in the hole, the two other Ruby Vanguard members. Both of them are fairly young. One of them, they unbind and take the blindfold off, and this is Petrov Godo from Exandria, who has discovered that he is an exalted and has sort of joined the Ruby Vanguard, very naive, and has made his way up to Ruidus. There's this tension of, are they going to kill this boy or not? And Imogen successfully, another deception check, successfully convinces the boy that the Willmaster actually was betraying all of them, and they are the true allied people of Predathos, and that if he wants, he can continue with them on the caravan, to which the boy is relieved. He's like, oh, thank goodness. They put the boy back into the hole. Excuse me. They put the boy back into the hole. They pull out the half orc. They do the same thing with the half orc. Another successful deception check. And they're basically, the two boys are like, okay, yeah, this is great. I'm glad we found the real good guys. And they decide, let's send you off to the caravan and we'll all head out in the morning. Now, there is one other detail. They decide, well, maybe we should walk the two boys back. So F.C.G. and Fern decide to walk the two boys, well, one's a young man, to the encampment where the caravan's waiting. And when they get there, they find a Ruby Vanguard person interrogating members of the caravan to figure out like where some of these missing people have gone. And the members of the caravan are like, oh, there's two of the young people right there. And as they point, Fern recognizes the interrogating senior official is actually one Otahan Thule. They immediately try to leave to escape. Otahan just, mega leaps in front of them, recognizes them, recognizes that Fern is, or rather Fern reveals that she herself is Rudisborn. And so Otahan's like, well, I shouldn't kill you, but your friend, probably fair game. Combat ensues. F.C.G. gets hit with 3 attacks, gets knocked down. It's looking like F.C.G. is going to die. And Sam Riegel says, I have 1 spell left. It's Banishment. And at the 6th level, I can cast it on 3 people. He casts it on Otahan as a Hail Mary, and it succeeds, but she uses a legendary resistance to pass the check for it, so it fails. And then he casts it on himself and Fern to banish both of them. The final spell that he has, and then as soon as they're banished to this other plane, they begin doing their cloud, like their smoke form, the spell that Keyleth had given them. Also, before this happens, he mentally tells the rest of the group, Otahan's here, run, and they all go into their smoke form as well. But not before what's her face? Laudna does her hunger of the void, hunger of the darkness. What's it called?
Hunger of the Shadow. And I think we're
Hunger
in
of
the
the
second
Shadow.
half, if you want me
Oh,
to.
are we?
Yeah, I think
Oh.
so.
I thought it was when like they flew off that it went to the break.
Maybe it was. It's been a while since I watched it, but I thought it was when like it was an Otahan cliffhanger. It doesn't
maybe
matter.
you're right.
Just you tag
Yeah.
me in whenever, and I'll.
I'm sorry, man. My
No,
bad.
you're
I didn't mean to
good.
jump on your. It's been so long since I've done one of these. I just
No,
want to do
you're
the
good.
whole
I
thing.
just, I was happy for you to keep going. I just wanted to let you know that I'm here
I would.
when you
I
need
was just
me.
gonna say she consumes the Willmaster, and I'm just real concerned about Laudna over here.
Yeah.
And then they all become smoke forms and basically fly away. I thought that was the break, but it might be. You're right. It might be after.
I honestly don't know.
So sorry about that, buddy.
No, you're good. You're good. So yeah, very scary moment from Laudna where Delilah basically, shows her cards. We're gonna be talking about that. The only other thing I'd mention is that Otahan jumps like 100 feet in the air to try to like slash at them, but misses. So she's got some ups for sure. So they reconvene everybody in their misforms and they decide to head off towards the capital city. And as they're flying, they realize they're going to have to find a place to rest along the way. So they're going, and like we've talked about before, there are some crazy storms on Ruidus that these misforms basically like can't risk going into. So they're looking for another place to kind of hide out and wait for the storm to pass. And they ultimately come across this like kind of fissure or crack in the earth that they fly down into. and it goes pretty deep. And as they're going, they can see like bones down here, but they just keep going deeper, and they can eventually hear rushing water. And amongst this kind of underground cavern that they find themselves in, there's like this little alcove that Matt describes as kind of like the inside of a geode with all of like the crystals jutting out. And they could rest here, but they realize that maybe isn't the best idea, because if they do, their mist forms will run out. So they'll have no way of like flying back out the way they came. It would be like really hard to get back out. So instead, they do transform back into their normal selves, but they decide to check out this rushing water that they have found is like this underground river. And thankfully, Fern has prepared water breathing, so that makes them basically go all in on this plan. So they do that, cast water breathing, and basically dive in and begin to explore this underground cavern. Um, they swim, and they eventually get to like a crossroads, if you will, where they can go one way with the current, or they can go another way against it. But they can hear like the splashing of water from the against the current direction, so they decide, let's check out that way. So they make their way up and basically come to this cavern, if you will, where it's tall. They can't even see the ceiling, but there's a waterfall in this cavern. So that's the noise they were hearing. So Imogen casts dancing lights and sends them up, and they find that in this cavern there are these like runic inscriptions on the walls, and they can actually see that there is a temple here. A very old looking temple, but it seems to be elvish in its design. So they're like, what the heck? Let's investigate this. So Laudna casts spider climb on herself and kind of just starts going up this wall and this waterfall to get a better look at this temple. And inside, she can see that there is like gardens and greenery. And they deduce that these must have been enchanted in some way in order to have survived this long. They also deduce that this temple must be back from when Ruidus was still a part of Exandria. Um, so she makes her way up and then uses the immovable rod with a rope to throw down for everybody else to come up and join her. But as she goes up, she sees there's like this tunnel kind of behind the waterfall, sort of. So they take note of that. And Chet, when he gets when everybody gets up there, Chet actually casts Grim Psychometry again, just on, I guess, on the temple, but kind of on this whole place, sort of. And he gets a vision, but it's not that clear because like it's so old that he can't really like make sense of it. But Matt describes him see the sky turn from blue to red, and just there's kind of this fear that he feels, but it all is just too old for him to understand. So the vision ends, and the party starts just kind of walking through the ruins of this temple. They come across one of these gardens, and there's red berries, and actually an old porcelain doll that's like with elvish features. So Laudna snatches that up, of course. And Fern actually tries one of these berries, and they're delicious and heal her for 1 HP. So this is a good berry in terms of 5e. Blake and I had a player that loved the good berries. So the party take a few of these berries, and then they continue walking around the temple. And they can see a lot of it is destroyed, both from just like rocks jutting into it, and also what looks to be like extreme heat damage. But then other parts of the temple are like almost pristine. And they must have been protected by some sort of magic to have been untouched like this. Um, so after they explored a little bit, they basically realized they have two options. They can kind of follow that like underground waterfall tunnel that they saw, or they could continue just to climb up the rocks and see where that leads. Um, so they actually decide to have Fern use her wild shape to turn into a little sea slug to go investigate this underwater tunnel, which is similar to something she did way back. I think it was the same time as the museum heist, at least that era, where she swam like into like a pot that was spewing out infinite water, and she ended up in the plane of water. So they're kind of like, let's do this again with a test with Fern, just in case there's something weird going on. So Fern does that, turns into a slug, starts swimming, and she makes it against kind of the current of this water until she reaches a point where there just is no more current, and she can see like a light up above her. So she swims about 80 feet up to breach, and when she does, she finds herself in this lake surrounded by like this beautiful forest. And it's like just like a beautiful kind of cloudy day, Matt describes. And so she tries to use the telepathic bond. I think that's the name of the spell. To
Mhm.
communicate and let everybody else know what she's seen, but she can't, which implies she's on another plane of existence entirely. And
Mhm.
that's where the episode ends. Devious little cliffhanger. But so once again, that was episode 85 of campaign 3, Intense Interrogations. And if you are just on our recap video and you want to tune in for our full discussion, there will be a link down in the description below. But yeah, man, that out of the way.
Oh man, what a wild episode.
Yeah.
We had a lot happen.
Yeah. Freaking Odahan's back, man. I was I mean, not to
I
just jump straight in, but or what were you gonna say?
I wondered if they were actually gonna fight her, and then I was like, "There's no way." I mean, the whole caravan's there. Like, there's no
Yeah.
way.
I mean, honestly, like MVP, like you mentioned earlier, Laura had insane deception rolls to start this episode. And so she would have been the MVP, but that maneuver from Sam
Mhm.
like was next level. And honestly, like I don't know like that was a crazy thing that kind of allowed them to get away. Like if he hadn't have thought of that, I think they would have had to fight, or at least I mean, I don't know. Maybe they would have had to like leave them and try
I
to
think
come
F
back and save them later or something.
I think FCG is dead. If there's no other, I don't know what other alternative there
Yeah, I
is.
mean, because
I
yeah,
mean,
Odohan was like, "We don't need you. We just need Fern." So
mhm,
yeah, maybe
mhm.
that's what it was. Like FCG dies, they take Fern prisoner, and Party has to go try to save her or something. I don't know, but yeah, it felt like that was like a one in a million out that Sam just happened to find
Yeah,
in that moment.
he's always
Um,
so good at that kind of stuff, man. You know,
Crazy.
he's a brilliant player.
Yeah, and it was even obviously massive credit to him, but I think it was Marisha and maybe even somebody else at the table that was like within that moment as it was happening, they were kind of like tossing out that idea as well of like, what if you cast it
Mm.
on yourself? So yeah, crazy idea. And that's just a great example of like player ingenuity and as a DM not like punishing it. Because I
Yeah, it would
saw,
have
did
been
you see this like discussion about that moment at all?
no, because I just finished the episode before we
Right, right.
jumped on. So
But you know, people were of course not. I'm sure it's the vocal minority, you know, as usual with these types of things. But people were very in their feels, rules lawyering the self banishment. Like
you
they
guys are the
wouldn't have
worst.
gone to
If
the
you're watching,
same
if
place, or like you're not allowed to cast
goodness,
a spell when you're in there. They wouldn't have been able to turn into mist. And it's like, okay, bro, like,
you guys are the worst. I'm being like as I feel like we're pretty kind in general. Like, oh, those people. I'm just gonna say, if you're watching this and you are that person, you are the worst kind of player. Like, you can just know you're the person at the table no one likes. Because I mean, you take this amazing moment, you know, and it's you just as a DM, you have to know when to reward player ingenuity,
yeah,
and and when like there's a time to be insistent on the rules. When someone like, which I feel like, speaking of Laura Bailey, I feel like she's the one who's the worst at this. Like really stretching, like, could I
yeah,
do this? You know, and Matt's
yeah,
like, no.
right,
But you know, and then when your players have really clever ideas, like you just got to reward that, you know?
absolutely.
So I really hate the whole rules lowering thing. And
Yeah. I mean,
for me,
there's a balance, right? Like you said, Matt, a lot of the times is like, no, like that's you can't do that. You know, so it's not as if like all rules are just out the window, but it takes like, you know, a good DM and kind of like a good table
mhm.
environment to know when to kind of ease off
Yeah,
on those things for these.
and I'll as a DM, I'll change and tweak things in the rules, which by the way, I think
Yeah.
like page 1 of the player's handbook says to basically do that
Yeah.
as you see fit. I will change not like in the moment, like, oh, I didn't like that, so I'm gonna change it, but I
Mm.
will change things, how a certain ability works, how a
Yeah.
mechanic works. I'll invent new abilities
Yeah.
just because I mean, I've had players in the past. I had a player one time who I did something and it was basically a homebrew on the evasion spell, technique,
Hmm.
whatever. And in this case, for this big bad, the evasion ability also at a certain roll would allow him to redirect the attack to someone else within 5 feet. And I had a guy who was like, "That's not how evasion works," and I just was like, That's how this one works. Now, fortunately, there was a lot of trust there, so he was like, "Oh, okay, that's kind of cool."
Yeah.
But I mean, there's people at tables out there who are just so like, "That's not how it works,"
Yeah.
and just can't move past it. I mean,
Which here's what I'll
just tough.
say, to each their own. If you have like an entire table and DM that like that's the game you guys want to play, like you're sticking to the rules as hard as freaking possible, then more power to you, you know? But like clearly that's not the game that Critical Role plays. So it's just ridiculous when people get so up in arms about this. It's like we've been at this for a decade almost. And you don't get this yet? Like, come on.
Yeah, I mean, hats off to them for like withstanding the endless criticism of just like,
Yeah.
they're probably like, "Hey, we just want to play D&D,"
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I hadn't seen any of that. I thought it was brilliant from Sam. I thought it was right
Amazing.
from you could tell Matt was a little uncertain too of like how the spell should play out, and I think it was the right move for him also
Hmm.
to be like, "Yeah, okay, let's do it." And like allowing them to cast, the shadow form or the smoke form, whatever.
Yeah.
What was that spell? Was that a scroll? Like, what was that gave them that
The
ability?
the mist thing.
Yeah, because I know it's from
Keyleth
Keyleth. I
cast it
can't
on them.
remember. Okay, okay,
So they've just been I think it
yeah,
has like 6 or 8 hour duration. So they've just been like using it.
yeah, okay.
But yeah, and not to
Anyway,
keep going on this, but just to kind of wrap it up in a nice bow, like that's the difference between, that moment now having been allowed and it's like this epic moment that they'll all remember, like, versus like what could have been a very disappointing, like frustrating moment, especially if it would have led to a player death. So
and that's the thing too is it's really angering as a player when you feel like you're not in control, and or maybe that's not the right way to put it. When you feel like there's not any outs for you,
mm,
like it's just what's happening. Like they ran into Autohan. It's not like there were any signals that like, hey, you're making a bad move by walking. Like they thought they were doing the right thing, walking these two people to the caravan, and then Autohan was just there, and not just there, but saw them and engaged with them immediately. Like you got to give your players some kind of out. Maybe out's not the right word, but like some canvas to draw on, like to play with and figure out. Um,
I
so I mean that's what Sam was doing. So
I get where
you
you're
know,
coming from, but I might push back a little bit on that because I think
okay,
that it's kind of their fault to not realize, like, because they knew Odahan had come through the bridge and was looking for
mhm,
them, and this is a huge commotion. Like, it makes sense to me that she would like be on their trail, as it were. And I do know that Matt did give Fern a perception check, and she rolled like that nat 1 on it, right?
that one. That's right.
So like
Yeah.
if she had rolled a little bit better, he might have been like, "You see, Odahan Thule is here," and so like maybe they could have,
Well,
like
let me put
noticed
it this
before
way.
they what?
Let me put it this way.
Yeah.
If I'm a player at that table and I'm F.C.G and I die, my player is dead. I'm pretty mad about how that played out.
Hmm.
For me, it's less about is it in the realm of possibility that Ottohan would be there, and should they have thought about it? I mean, from Laudna's perspective, Marisha said it herself. She was like, I thought I used the scry ball. Like I thought we knew Ottohan wasn't here. Um, I don't know. I would feel pretty rough if I had died in that situation. Not that Sam would, but
Hmm. Well,
if I'm the DM, I'm thinking let's at least create some space for them to think of something creative to get
I
out of this.
again, I totally get where you're coming from. I just think that space did technically exist, but I think there's also the possibility for things to go wrong and players to die, right? And obviously, there's
Sure.
probably not too much point in talking about something that didn't happen, but yeah, I mean, I think there was kind of like, I don't know, I don't want to say like the warnings because it's not as if Matt was like, "Don't go out there by yourself," but you know, I I think even if the banishment hadn't happened, I think there still could have been theoretical other outs that you're referring to.
Sure.
We don't know what those are, and also it could have been like they could have been honest, and that might have saved FCG's life. Like Imogen's
True.
up there, like spare him. But
Well, and
anyway,
they could have also not acted like, you know,
I forgot my
hey,
purse.
we shouldn't be here,
Yeah,
Adahan, what are you doing here? They could have just tried to blend in, I mean,
yeah,
Adahan had the battle with them, but that was a long time ago, and it's not necessarily the case that she would immediately recognize them. Now, I guess she
true.
did say, "I'm looking for someone who looks like you basically, but
Yeah, two.
uh,
Unfortunate that it is two of the most recognizable members, like the
yeah,
big
they couldn't.
fawn and the
Yeah, they
robot.
couldn't send freaking Laudna or
Yeah.
something. I don't know. I guess Laudna's also pretty conspicuous, but
But it's also this. I'm moving away from that current dynamic we were talking about, but it's interesting to find out that the reason Odahan like arrived there was because like the root is born
mhm,
Wi-Fi, if you will, which makes sense because when Imogen had that dream or whatever, she sees all the lights,
right.
and like the brightest ones were in Kavaris or whatever. So she did similarly kind of have this recognition of where everyone else was. So I didn't even consider that Odahan or anyone else could use that as well to find her. So I kind of liked that piece coming together for
Mhm,
um helping to explain how Odahan did find them that quickly.
mhm.
But yeah, man, I was really worried because not only is she just, a threat from the last time we saw her, but like the party's running on E right now. So like I was like, what are they gonna do? And then
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
we've had 3 straight episodes of combat. So I think
Yeah.
it's injected some much needed life into the campaign of like, oh, now here's another big thing we got to figure out. What are we gonna do? And as soon as Autohunt showed up, I mean, just looking at all their faces, I mean, they just knew like this is
Yeah.
bad. This is really bad.
Yeah.
And
And
it was
when
fun,
and
you
when
know.
Sam messaged everybody and just told them to run, like and
Hmm.
don't come, like I'm done basically, like
Yeah,
you be safe. That was a great little moment too. Everyone's face was like, what?
yeah.
um but yeah, anything else on that part specifically?
Um, I mean, I just think we have to be heading to an encounter with Autohan
Yeah.
in the near future. We've said this, I guess, before they left Exandria, that in the next 10 episodes, 10 or 15, there might be a major conflict with Autohan. They've, you know, brushed shoulders a few times now. I just
Yeah,
have to imagine, they're heading to something like that in the near future.
for sure. She definitely
I don't,
feels like the mini boss.
yeah, I don't think she's the BBEG. I don't think. Um,
Yeah. I
but
I don't either. Um but maybe like, well, no. Yeah, I don't either. But she might still be like one of the boss fights,
yeah,
but not the boss, if that makes sense.
it is cool though. I applaud that. It's fun. It's fun when you really make your players go to empty on like spell slots and like what they
Yeah.
can do. Because I've definitely been in a position where like I plan like what I think is like an epic combat, and then the combat ends and everyone's still like, you know, they got like 50% of their
That,
spell slots still,
yeah.
three-fourths life. Everyone's like, we're good. And I'm like, okay, well, there's that, I guess. Um, the cool thing for one of my campaigns was they had an encounter in the session we did. We had this encounter, and then we had the next encounter. And the guy who was more of the experienced, everyone was kind of green. The guy who was more like experienced, because it was like this big golem thing. He was like, "Hey, this is the boss. Like, use everything you got."
Oh.
And he's like, "This is the end of the dungeon. Like, just so everyone knows, like, it's time to use it." And he was trying to be helpful.
Yeah.
Um, turns out that was a mini boss,
Oh.
and the real boss was the next session. So the next session, we went into combat, and people were like, "I have one spell slot. Like, what do I
Ooh.
do?" And that one was a crazy one. But anyway, so I just think it's fun when like the DM kind of pushes the party to like really use everything they got,
Yeah.
uh, which gets harder to do when the party gets like into double digit letters, and you have like 10 spell slots or more. It's
Yeah.
just anyway.
Yeah, war of attrition for sure. Gotta
Hmm.
throw several things at them. Um, but to rewind a little bit about this interrogation, your whole I joked about it in the recap, but the whole are they the baddies thing, we have kind of a split in the party a bit with like, not wanting to kill the Woolmaster versus killing the Woolmaster. Which I thought made sense, but it is just one of those, and this is not a criticism on Critical Role at all, but it's just one of those interesting kind of things in D&D because it's like when are you going to pick up this moral dilemma? Because like throughout the entire
Mm,
campaign, it's just the nature of the game. You're killing
yeah,
things all of the time, right?
right.
They killed stuff literally the previous two combat encounters. And if anything, this Willmaster seems like one of the not the heads of the snake, but still like
Right,
higher up on the totem pole. Like, why have mercy here?
right.
But I do understand why. I think it was Fern and F.C.G were both the ones that like had a real issue with it. Um,
Yeah, Fern of all people, the
yeah,
chaos demon over here. You never know what she's gonna want to do, and she's the one who's like, I just don't feel right about
yeah.
using the harness. Like,
So I just thought that was interesting. It'll be interesting to see kind of if that dynamic grows even more, like as we progress into the end
mhm.
game. Like I'm sure none of them are going to be like, "Don't kill Odahan," like not
Right. I
her
mean,
or like Ludinus, but it'll just be
yeah,
interesting to see.
it's weird. The whole weird isn't the right word. 'Cause I don't mean it in a critical way, but like, it's weird navigating because the
Yeah.
party really, as a whole, you don't have a pike. You don't have someone who's like committed. And it's like clear when they like sway away from like their moral ideals.
Mhm.
You have a party that really doesn't have like a moral I don't think I mean like foundation. Like none of them are like connected to a deity except for maybe Aurum.
Well, FCG now,
FCG,
but yeah.
right? FCG is probably the most committed and the most moral, ironically, of the group, being
Mhm.
I say ironically being the non I mean, I think he has a soul or they have a soul, but
Yeah.
the non-soul automaton. But yeah, it creates this really weird dynamic of like, why shouldn't we kill him? And
Yeah.
like we've seen like some of that really like evolve over time, like from the backing of the temple to now with this, Lana, for example, was really set. Like, I want us to consume, I don't want to waste the harness. I want to consume the will
Yeah.
breaker,
She's a,
will master.
she's a little bit different though, with whatever's going on with her, which we can talk about that too. I think that's
I
heavily
mean,
Delilah influenced though, if
bro,
not
you're
entirely.
you're not gonna play the "it's not her fault" line, are you?
I'm not
Like,
I'm not saying it's not her fault.
I'm getting real tired of it. This dialogue. Every time I point something out, you're like, "Oh, that's not yay,
I'm just saying I'm just saying
hey."
it's
I'm
not
just
maybe the
like,
best example to use for this
it's a
dichotomy
perfect
where
example.
well
She's
just
she's the one who's chosen to embrace Delilah.
no, yeah,
I
okay,
mean, she's the
agreed.
one.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm like,
I'm not saying it's not her fault. That
I'm
wasn't
just
where I was
saying, what's
going.
what's different between her and any villain in any story ever? Like, she's not like twirling a mustache, but
Yeah,
I mean,
no,
she's doing what she thinks is the right decision, and
you're
it's
right.
very questionable.
I
So,
100% agree with all of that. 100% agree with all of that. All I'm saying is that like in terms of like defining the moral compass of the group and how they navigate these decisions, she has like a literal parasite demon inside of her that is influencing her. That's all I was
she
saying.
has, I wouldn't call it a parasite. I'd call it a partner. She has embraced Delilah. She loves Delilah.
Yeah.
Let's do it, Team Delilah. Let's go. So I mean,
Agreed.
she has made her choices. And I just think the party as a whole, they're in kind of a weird space where I'm like, are we like an episode away from like going full baddie here? Like all the foundational pieces are there.
I
I
don't
remember
think we're an
Jerry.
episode away from going
So
full baddie, but we
sure.
might be an episode away from inter-party conflict because I don't think they're all on the same page.
No, yeah.
I mean, clearly FCG and Fern voiced their, dissent with the decision, but speaking about Laudna specifically, the hunger of the shadow moment or whatever, which I think this is the third time we've seen her use this.
Used it on
Bordor.
Bordor. And then what was the other one?
Um I know she's done it at least twice. Was it maybe on somebody in Whitestone when they
Let's
went
see.
into like the hidden Percy's lab or whatever?
Yeah, it could
It might not
be.
it might not have been that
Okay, yeah.
moment, but I think it
Let's
was
see.
because every time.
She used it on FCG.
Oh right, so yeah, I think maybe she's used it 4 times then.
So FCG, Bordor, the ghost in Whitestone when
Yeah,
she
that's what I'm
was
talking about.
exploring that one night. Yeah. And then on the Wheelmaster is the
Yeah.
fourth one.
And we still don't know like the mechanics of it. And there might not be a literal like written on the card mechanic, but a role play mechanic at the very least is every time she uses it, Matt describes like boom, boom, like the heartbeat getting stronger, and like he describes like the imagery getting darker, like as if Delilah is taking more and more over every time she uses this ability, as if like she is literally feeding
Hmm.
Delilah within her. Which I don't agree with what she did here, but I loved the moment. Like I love this
Yeah,
moment narratively.
sure.
Um with everyone at the table kind of like freaking out except Orem. I don't know if you noticed, but like everyone was literally like, "What is Laudna doing?" And Orem was just like sipping from his stein. And it's like, he's plotting that contingency plan. He's like, "I gotta take her out, or I might have to take her out." So
Orm, though,
go
I
ahead.
mean, ironically, is the one who encouraged her to kill
True,
Bordor.
true. Ends
So
justify the means with him, basically. Like I think absolutely with Bordor for sure, but I feel like, yeah, I don't know what's going on with Orm, man. Speaking of moral compass, I felt like at the
yeah,
start of this campaign I would have said it was him, but he's
me
like
too.
one of the
Well, he
furthest from it.
was. Yeah, he
Yeah,
was,
yeah,
and I think I don't know if it's too overt to be like he's become like cynical or like he has seen that like morality is kind of naive in like the current. Maybe he thinks about Will and thinks if I had was willing to fight dirty, it never would have happened. I don't know.
yeah,
But yeah, it definitely seems the most not lost, but just like has moved away from kind of the very much straight and narrow. He's not doing anything in each episode. He's not like, let's go rob the place, but just
yeah.
definitely doesn't seem to have those ideals like he did when we first saw him in EXU.
Yeah, and I think you nailed it with the will thing. I think it's just so close to him, right? Like this is the people who took everything from him. So I think he just decided that like he's gonna do whatever he needs to do to make that right. Um,
Hmm.
and I also wonder if like we don't have a full novel about Orum's backstory, but we know he's a soldier, right? So I wonder if there's some part of it that's like a mode he switches on in his brain in order to
Hmm.
do the things you got to do as a soldier on the battlefield. Like maybe there's kind of
Hmm.
this like, okay, we got to enter war mode now, and so empathy, all those things shut off. Like time to take care of business.
I feel like it was most strange having Fern speak up and be like, I don't know about this guy. And
Yeah.
maybe it's the Fey connection, knowing that Ludinus had used it on Fey creatures.
Mm.
Because I mean,
Yeah.
she adores Grandmother Mori,
Yeah.
who I mean, also seems to have done some very questionable things, um, or has a methodology that I don't know if it's as pure as your classic like hero kind of
True.
archetype. And she's never really seemed like moved or bothered by any of that. It's like, yeah, these are people who are stuck in this garden for eternity. And anyway, so it was interesting that she was like, I don't know if we should
Yeah.
do that.
Yeah.
So,
That's
but
a good point.
it may be the Fey connection that it's for her. It's even too close. Also,
Yeah. Well, she's always been chaotic and stealing from anybody, but I'm trying to think. Like, I don't think she's ever just been like like murderous isn't the right word, but like she definitely has her. I don't want to call it evil, but like in terms of good evil D&D alignment, that's the only way I'm using this word evil. She definitely has her evil tendencies of like doing those types of chaotic things, but never like is just out for blood.
yeah,
So I could see just like in a vacuum it making sense that she like is taking a stand here, because it is kind of like it is a bad guy, but they're kind of like in a helpless position right now, and we're just gonna murder them in cold blood type of thing. But to the grandmother Maury stuff, that's a great point, because she's definitely done some messed up stuff. But I wonder if there's like this weird level of like willful ignorance there, where like
yeah.
she
Hmm.
didn't see grandmother Maury like torture people or like literally like watch her, condemn somebody to a life of being a shrubbery. So maybe it's kind of like out of sight, out of mind kind of thing. Like
Right.
they deserved it, or like I don't
Yeah.
know. But that is interesting.
And then Chetney, I mean, Chetney hasn't gone crazy recently, but he's still the Chetney who brutally attacked the shopkeep owner
Yeah.
for having too high of prices. So there's
True.
that.
True.
And then Ashton, I don't know where I stand with Ashton. I mean, Ashton, I in some ways I kind of agreed with like his thinking of like, hey, we can send the Wheelmaster out on a Woo car, but they're just gonna die in 3 days anyway. Like, how's it any different? Um,
Yeah.
so I kind of agreed with that, but then he was also the one like pushing like, yeah, we just got to kill him. So
Mm,
I don't know how I feel about Ashton.
true. I mean,
But
again, aside from Laudna, citing back to just like the way D&D works, I don't really fault any of them for like wanting to kill the Willmaster. Like maybe I
sure.
should. Like maybe I
Well, the
should.
Wheelmaster's yeah, well, yeah, the Wheelmaster's a baddie. Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. I'm with you. Yeah.
so
I
so
think
yeah.
I think the thing that made it more I think that made it more gray was using the harness. It was like this is
Mm,
something our potential BBEG, arch nemesis, whatever, the big baddie has created and has probably used for an insane amount of like torment and murder, like literally consuming the essences of these fey creatures. And like,
yeah.
hey, now we're gonna. It's basically what Fern said. So I think that's what made it a little bit stickier.
Yeah.
But they were also talking about killing Petrov
Right.
in Verdo too, which I actually thought that Imogen was like kind of cozying him up to get information then kill him.
Yeah.
Which I'm glad that's not what happened, but
Yeah,
um,
if they had just killed all three of them from the jump, like before any interrogations, I really wouldn't have had an issue with it. But once we learn more about Petrov, that he's just this kid, like then that would have been really dark if they had.
which yeah, and great job, Matt. I love how Matt fleshed this out. That it
Yeah.
wasn't like these are all just like former thieves or
Right.
bandits or whatever. Like this is a kid who he didn't pick this.
Right.
He was picked,
Yeah.
and resonated with the mission. And I don't know. I felt bad for him.
Me too. So yeah, I'm glad
So,
glad he made it out at least for now. But also, before we step away from all this, the
and I'll have something else to say too about Laden before we move away.
yeah, that's what I want to talk about too. I thought, I mean, obviously we know what's going on with her. We've talked about it with Delilah, but excuse me. In particular, I just thought it was one very telling and two like a great character choice when she was taking out the Will Master. How she said like your power should have gone to me and not the halfling. Like just how detached to call Orem the halfling instead of his name, right? Like,
I'm and here's my question. At, at what I mean, speaking of willful ignorance, at what point does someone say something? At what point is someone like, "Hey, buddy,
yeah,
can we sit down and talk about this?"
yeah,
Like, and I'm not even so much talking about Critical Role. Even like, there comes a point like in D&D party dynamics where like it's not. It goes beyond like we see things a little bit differently. Like, hey, the way you approach this is in contrast with how I'm approaching this. So, like, what's the RP way to navigate that? And I'm a little surprised that no one's been like, it almost feels like Lana is crazy, right? Like,
Pooch is
ooh,
seriously
yeah.
crazy.
I'm surprised no one's like, no, really, Laudna needs some help. Like, because think about this. I thought that line was like the biggest cry for help. But remember when Taliesin, when Ashton did the shard thing and she wanted to kill Ashton, like murder Ashton,
yeah.
like I just I think you're right that like everyone kind of has their morally gray whatever, and then there's Laudna.
Mhm.
Like it feels like Laudna is in need of real help, and I guess I'm surprised that no one's been like, hey, like can we get a wellness check? Like, Laudna, like, we need to, like, we literally went to the upside down to save you from
Yeah.
Delilah. Like, we went through all these extremes to help you. Like, I don't, it's just, I guess it's weird to me that no one has been like, and I guess like the plot's moving forward. I don't think anyone's like ignoring it because of that, but I'm just surprised no one's been like, hey, Laudna has some issues. We need to figure this out. But I
well,
don't know.
first of all, let me say I totally agree with you, but I will also provide the I don't know, caveat's not the right word, but they have talked about it. Like there have been mentions of this arc she's on basically since the Bordor moment. Now they've never like fully sat down and like had an intervention, but there have been conversations, and I think the conclusion they came to was like, we need this
Right.
power for what we're about. Like, we need all the help we can get. Um, so I will say that it's not like just been this thing that's been completely ignored from the jump, which I think sheds some light on it. Like, it makes sense to some extent that like they aren't just completely shutting it out. But that being said, I do think it's pretty strange that there wasn't a word said after that moment in this episode. Now, again, we quickly went into like a Odahan situation, so like maybe it kind of got moved to the back burner. Um, but then there was potentially space for something like that during the second half where they're kind of exploring around. And what I'll say is maybe there is still room for that to come up in tonight's episode or later. But I would agree that if like it's never mentioned at all, that is kind of weird to me. Like,
Yeah, and maybe they try to spin it. It's kind of like a Sarret situation from Calamity, in that you, his fellow members of the brass ring, were
mm,
involved in some shady stuff. And like when you look at everyone's flaw, like his flaw was like turning a blind eye to those
hmm
things, I guess. Like maybe that will develop and mature in a way where it's like, yeah, we needed Laudna to do this, and yet like we were kind of naive in like ignoring it for so long. Because I think you're right, they did address it, and I think there was even a point where maybe Imogen and Laudna talked about it, and they both kind of agreed like, hey, we should both kind of embrace this.
yeah,
Or maybe
yeah.
she was saying it to Imogen only. I don't remember.
I think it
I
was
feel like,
kind of a both ways type of convo.
yeah, I think there was something mutual there of like,
Yeah.
yeah, we should probably embrace this. But yeah, I mean, she's a little unhinged. I love that you pointed out the detachment with Orem.
Yeah, calling him the
Um,
halfling, like that really stood out to me. And here's what I'll say is that it's not as if it went unclocked. I even called it out earlier that I could tell Orem, like everyone else was like, what? But Orem was like stone faced. So like, and he didn't like express this in a monologue for us to all hear, but I definitely think Orem clocked it and is like contingencying in his mind. So and that made me think like, okay, who would sit down with Laudna? And it really is, who would it be besides Imogen?
it's got to be Imogen,
You
right?
know,
I
and they
mean,
did already kind of talk about it. So maybe like to her, it's like, well, you know, this is what we agreed was for the best. But yeah, I don't know. I definitely see that boiling over as opposed to they sit down, have their intervention, and set her on the right path. Like I don't think that's gonna happen.
I think to bring this full circle, I think it's the pain point is highlighted by the fact that the party as a whole really, it's really hard to nail down their moral principles, for lack of a better phrase.
Mm.
Like it's hard to have that conversation and be like, "Hey, this is a little weird because we all love the Don Father, and you're doing
Yeah.
stuff that's weird."
Yeah.
Like
True.
that, just for hypothetical sake. It and the party really wavered around like, do we save the gods or not? And it's just it's always been very vague, their ideals, their values, other than like just the generic we're the good guys, you
hmm
know? So I think that makes the conversation harder to have
Yeah, I agree.
because you don't have a paladin in the group to be like, hey, like,
Yeah. And a lot of other
you
people don't
know,
really have ground to stand on in terms of just being a complete hypocrite, you know,
right,
like because
exactly.
they've all got their own stuff. So yeah, I think that's
So,
a great insight, for sure.
yeah. Well, I mean, it could boil over any minute. I mean, and it may never boil over. I don't know. I mean, it could just be
I think
something
it
that,
will. Like I think, and again, whether this is a literal mechanic written down on the spell or not, I would assume it's not. I would imagine in Matt's mind, there's some X
yeah,
number of
there has
like
to be,
if
right?
this happens, like I don't know what that means. Like, does Delilah fully like incarnate and take over Laudna, or like not necessarily that, but I think there is some threshold that once it's passed, like something's gonna happen. And so like when is that gonna happen? Because like it is like a combat ability, right? So can you imagine like in a fierce combat that like something like that happens and they have to deal with that too? And we've talked about this, right? It's like half the party has kind of like a berserk switch that could go off at any time, like F.C.G, Chetney, Laudna, Imogen, um, maybe others too. But yeah,
And
I'm.
Imogen got a new feat too, right? Being
Oh
a
yeah,
druidess. feel like she got a new one.
I think you're right. It wasn't this episode though, right? It was
Yeah, maybe not. I guess it was a
when they
couple
leveled
episodes ago.
up.
Yeah, yeah,
I can't.
I
Yeah,
think that's right.
I'm familiar with what you're saying, but I can't remember what it was.
Yeah, and not
Also,
besides the
speaking
point, but
of new stuff, I don't have it sitting in front of me right now, so I can't like point to directly what it was. But some interesting stuff that Orem has that might be related to the deal he made with Nanamori. I
hmm
saw some people talking about it in the Discord. Again, I don't have it pulled up right now, but because we know he's only taken levels in fighter, so some of the stuff he's done doesn't make sense.
hmm
So that's interesting because I know we were talking about like what exactly were the
hmm
benefits he got from that pact, um,
hmm
which it seems to be maybe some sort of warlock esque
hmm
stuff. Um,
I think it was like Fey touched or
oh
something
yeah, I
was
think that's what it was.
yeah, which I don't remember the full details, but I think it was like a feat, right?
I think you're right. That
Yeah, pretty
sounds
sure
right.
it's a feat. Um, yeah, okay, whatever. I think it was something like that though.
So yeah, like even with just to kind of round this with a nice bow, even with the insane stakes of just what's happening right now in general, the God Eater, Ruidus, Predathos, all of this stuff. We also have all of these just time bombs in the inner party dynamics, and so it's like if these things all go off at the same time, like that's gonna be bad news bears.
What do you think they're waiting on with Predathos? Like it was clear Matt was really keen
Yeah,
not to reveal that, even though they were really trying to get the answer.
yeah,
Which could be maybe Matt. I would say I'm extremely doubtful that Matt doesn't know what they're waiting on when it's been this long. Um, but I'm curious why Matt is very insistent on not why he was very insistent in this episode not revealing that detail.
yeah. Um, so real quick before we dive into that portion, since we didn't get a chance to really talk about stuff in the previous episodes, just like a really quick rundown of what we learned about these people on Ruidus is one, they were basically always there.
hmm
Two, there was history of all of the time here, but it was like
Destroyed,
burned,
right?
like
Yeah.
deliberately gotten rid of by the higher ups in power, which is very
hmm
interesting. And
They've
these higher
been
ups
in
in power
power
are called the
like
Weave
500.
Mind.
Yeah, it was like it's been like 500 years or something since they've been in
I
power.
think I think that's been however long Barthy, like
Oh,
his,
okay.
because Ruidus has been there for longer than that. But I think
Right.
I
Yeah.
remember that time frame as well, and so I think that was like his experience because that's how old he
Yeah.
is.
Okay.
But so the Weave Mind destroyed it, and they're preaching like they want Predathos to awake, and so they're
Mm.
um,
The Blue
preaching this
Promise.
stuff to everybody, telling them that
Yeah.
you are the true inheritors of Exandria, and like the plan is we're gonna wake up Predathos, and then we can inherit the planet, which is rightfully ours. And we know that they dream our dreams. Like when they sleep, they see Exandrians' dreams. So like that's kind of they've been using that as almost propaganda to be like this is the life you could be living type of thing.
Right.
Um, so anyway, thought that was interesting that in terms of the cult, for lack of a better word, they're doing this because they think that like they will inherit the earth, as it were.
Right.
So as to why haven't they woken up Predathos yet? What are they waiting for? My best guess is that they're not waiting, they can't yet. And I don't think they can yet with something to do with these Ruidusborns. Maybe it's just the Exalteds, maybe it's as many as they can get. But we know Imogen has been very like important to them for a long time. Um, we know that Ludinus, which I want to talk about this separately as well, but Ludinus like specifically has called attention to Fern.
hmm
When Odaham was like, "We can't hurt you, you're Rudis born," but also like he mentioned you or something.
Right.
So I want to return
Yeah.
to that, but so that makes me think that the Ruidusborns are integral to whatever's happening here. I mean, we know that they are literally being called here. Like all the Ruidusborns are feeling pulled and drawn to the Malleus Key and potentially to Ruidus thereafter. So my thought is that Predathos has given a piece of his power to all of these people, especially Exaltants. Imogen's entire power source is Predathos
Mm.
in a way. maybe he needs that back to
Hmm.
fully awaken. So I don't know if there's like a sacrificial ritual at play here, or if it's not, maybe they don't have to be killed to do it. But for my money, and maybe it's not even like, maybe that's not the vibe of it at all, but maybe they just need them all there to like help awaken him or something. Um, but
Yeah, if we go
that's my best guess.
if we go back to the build up to episode 51, the Apogee Solstice, we were really talking about like the dynamics of how's the party going to take on all of these Rudisborn who were gathering at the excavation site.
Hmm.
And one of the things we talked about was maybe they're not going to take them on. Maybe everyone's getting together and they're going to be like mass sacrifice
Yeah,
to
yeah,
free Ruidus. So I'm remembering that detail and I'm wondering, yeah, could that still be the case? I mean, I
yeah,
brought on to be like, I can't even kill one Rudisborn. I have to keep you alive, which that might be more Fern than it is just being a Rudisborn,
yeah.
or a combination of both.
Right.
But they're caravanning people to the city. I think you're right. I think there's some critical mass where they need enough Rudisborn to unlock the door, I guess.
Yeah. That that would be my thought right now. My best guess on it. Because it would just make sense, right? Like, why is there this big theme of like the connection between all of them and the pull between all of them? Like, I think, again, even if it's not sacrificial, I think they are required to some extent. Um, and that would answer why they're waiting, because why are they waiting, right? If they could just do it right now, why wouldn't they have done it right now? So
Right.
I think it's like they can't, not they haven't. Now to the to the Fern thing, I do agree with what you're saying, that because I mean obviously some Rudisborn are going to be taken out, like they're at war.
Mhm.
Maybe they are prioritizing non-Rudisborns to the front lines for all we know, but I think there's something different beyond just the fact that Fern is Rudisborn, that Ludinus specifically like called her out by name to Odahan. And back in the Shard episodes, it might have just been like subject to circumstance that Fern happened to
No,
be like, you
I'm with
know,
you. Yeah, I know
but
where you're going with
Ludinus
this.
like was leaving with Fern. So like,
Right. Hmm.
what do they want with her? Plus, when we factor in everything we found out about her, that she was like specifically birthed by, what was his name? I always think of Solmir now, but
All the Lord Zethuda,
yeah, like he clearly had plans for
Feminar's
Fern.
boss.
But like back then I would have assumed that those were his singular plans, like with his own machinations. But and maybe they still were, but maybe whatever he was cooking up made her important in some way, and Ludinus knows this now. But she's not exalted, which is interesting. So
Yeah,
I'm just
she's not an exaltant, and yet I was thinking the same thing um, when he tried to didn't try to kidnap Imogen. He tried to
right,
take Fern.
right.
So it's very interesting. It definitely feels like there's more there for sure.
Yeah. So I wish I had a better theory for how that puzzle piece fit in,
Yeah.
but right now I don't. But the mystery is certainly interesting. And what that's shout out to y'all in the comments. That'd be one of the things I would love to hear y'all's perspective on.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, just kind of bigger picture. There's obviously something a little bit deeper going on with Fern. So I just would love to know more about that. And I'm curious if whatever that piece is from her father and from that side of things, if it's the same exact piece that Ludinus is interested in, or if it's connected but not necessarily that.
Yeah, maybe it's something like related to like, not just freeing Predathos on the physical plane, but like giving him like full range of power, like across like the Shadowfell and the
Mm,
Feywild too. I don't know
true.
because isn't
I mean, were
Fern
they?
like connected to both? She's from the Feywild, but then when she died, she went to the Shadowfell.
Do we know that for sure? I'm not
Well,
saying you're
no,
wrong. I just
no,
don't remember.
I think we just guessed that that was the case.
Yeah, because I mean, we
Um,
know that there was Malleus keys in both of those places.
and with the Sorrow Lord, I mean, you know, I see darkness in you kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So like maybe she's connected to both planes, and which then makes me wonder, again, going back to the history of Predathos, the two deities that were absorbed, killed, whatever, and
Hmm.
our guess that maybe they represented those two planes as well. Um, so I don't know.
Oh, yeah, that would make sense to me. Ethodoc and Vordo, I think.
Yeah,
Um, which Ethodoc was like, I'm not looking at it right now, but I think his like title was something about shadows, like Lord of Shadow or something.
yeah,
Um, and Vordo was like the Fate Shaper, I think, which is
yeah.
very, very Fey.
Hmm.
So yeah, I mean that that would make sense to me. So I'm just very curious how that all factors into his plan. I also wonder, we've talked about this before, but since the harness came up, and I think Chetney was like taking a closer look at it to see if that's how they were being tracked. And they came to the conclusion that that's not the case. But one of the things they were talking about is because yeah, he has a new harness.
Mm.
Which again made me think of like not that the harness needs to be a Chekhov's gun that has like this big moment. I'm not saying that, but if it were, then again, and we've talked about it, but maybe Ludinus's plan is to not free Predathos but consume him. Um, which if that were the case, maybe he just can't do it in the slumbering Predathos form. But you would think like let's just do this while he can't counterattack me. But maybe
I
he
mean,
like has to awaken first.
it could be they can't open the door. It's not that they can't wake him up; they
That would be
can't even open
interesting.
the
Yeah.
door to then wake him up. Like that
Right.
could be the issue. Um, but I'm with you though. It feels like the theme of the harness is signaling that Ludinus, you know, if his whole life is around revenge against the deities, why entrust someone else to take care of your business?
Yeah.
Even as compelling as Predathos is, I could definitely see a very like Thanos esque. I'll do it myself.
Yeah.
Consume Predathos, become a god, which is a nice nod to the theme of the Age of Arcanum, which we think Ludinus is from.
Right.
It's very on point. It's just a great carry through of that theme.
Yeah.
Um,
Plus, it's more
so
it's more human. I know he's an elf, but more human, right? To like
yeah,
to want that power, like because we've talked about like he's going about it in very wrong ways, but like to some level there is like a not heroic's not the right word, but like there's a what he's trying to do, at least as he's presenting it, is good for everyone. Like it's not selfish,
right,
but it is obviously selfish. And so that if he
right.
was trying to, consume Predathos, then that very much would make it a more villainous, selfish act. Now I haven't thought about this at all. It just popped into my head. But what if he wants to use the harness on Fern? What if that's why he wants her? Like, because she is Fey and she's Ruidus born and she's like heavily connected to these powerful pieces. Um, just a random thought I just had.
That's an interesting idea for sure. Yeah, very
And
interesting,
speaking of
especially
the
with
harness, I did wish I wish they had gotten to use it on the Willmaster because I want to see what the permanent buff would have been.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, and they technically could have. It's just that um uh Laudna was just like, well, now's a good time for me to go ahead and kill this lady. And they
yeah.
could have knocked her out again, I guess, and like bound and gagged her. But
True.
so anyhow.
Um,
What else
let me.
is up?
I'm trying to find my notes. I don't know what I just did with them. I think we've talked about most things I wanted to, but let me just peruse really quick. Um, no, yeah, the things I had written down, we talked about all of them. So, um, yeah,
Well, let us know what you guys thought about this episode, either in the comments or in the Discord. Again, we have our watch party tonight to watch tonight's episode. I'll tune in for a little bit. I'm not raiding tonight, you know.
nice.
So I gotta get that work event tomorrow, so I took the night off. Um, but yeah, and then we'll have our live show tomorrow. So
Yeah, potentially later though, right? So yeah,
right, maybe
stay
like half an
tuned
hour
for that.
later.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess that does it.
I guess
So
that does it. Yeah. I don't know if I can watch the full episode, but I'll be there for the live party tonight as well. I didn't get to make it last week, so I'm excited to hang out with you guys. So if you're not already in the Discord, come join us. Like I said, it's a great group of people out there, and I truly mean that. Like we've, you know, maybe I'm not trying to pat us on our own backs here, but I feel like we've cultivated an amazing community. Like we only get the good
Yeah.
ones, it feels like. So shout out to you guys. And if you're looking for, a less toxic community to watch along with, join the Discord, come hang out with us. Um, but yeah, that's all I got.
All right. We will see you all later.
Alrighty, bye y'all.